The year was 1865, and the Wyoming Territory bled both silence and gunfire in equal measure. Wind swept across the plains like a mother searching for a lost child, relentless and hollow. Clara Ellison stood at the edge of Potter's Hill Cemetery, her black skirts whipping against her ankles, the worn lace veil barely clinging to her graying hair. The grave was fresh. The scent of earth, bitter and raw, clung to her skin. She didn't cry. There weren't tears left for burying brothers. Men had gathered, 10 or 12 in all, but they did not come for grief. They came to witness, to whisper. They shifted in their Sunday boots, glancing sideways, muttering low. Words like spinster too old, burden. Not one offered a hand as she stepped away from the pine box, lowered into the dirt. Clara nodded stiffly to the preacher. You said enough, Reverend. Let the boy rest. She turned on her heel before he could bless the mound. Her brother, Nathaniel, had been all she had left. A fool, a dreamer, and far too full of schemes, but hers. He died in a skirmish outside Red Rock Trading Post, gut shot over something the marshal hadn't cared to explain. A disagreement, they called it. Whiskey and cards, they claimed. Clara knew better. He'd been chasing gold again. And this time, someone had taken offense. She walked the half-mile to town with the gait of a woman who hadn't stopped for breath in years. The heat pressed down like judgment. Dust coated her boots, and her shawl stuck to her shoulders. At the general store, she stepped inside, nodding at the clerk. Rifle cartridges, she said. The man looked up, brow raised. Clara, you got varmints out at the cabin? No, she said, dropping coins on the counter. Something worse. He hesitated before bagging the shells, glancing at the other men lounging near the barrels of oats. One snorted. What's she need a rifle for? Who'd want anything she's protectin'? Clara didn't blink. Just the land my brother died for. That's all. They laughed behind her as she walked out, bag in hand, spine straight as a musket. She didn't look back. The cabin lay 2 miles outside town, tucked against the edge of what folks called Whispering Hollow. Pine trees towered like old gods, and the wind always spoke low through the branches. She had no livestock left, save a mule too mean to sell. The porch creaked under her weight as she stepped up and pushed the door open. Something was off. The air smelled of sweat. Not hers, of sour tobacco and boot leather. A coffee mug lay shattered by the hearth. She froze. Her fingers slid into the folds of her skirt and wrapped around the cold iron of her father's old derringer. From the shadows, a voice sneered, told you she'd come home. A man stepped forward. Greasy beard, wide-brim hat. Behind him, 2 more lounged in her kitchen chairs like they owned the place. One stirred her stew pot with a knife. The other toyed with her brother's compass, the one he never let go of. Clara Ellison, the first one said, drawing her name out like a threat. We've been looking for you. I ain't hard to find, she answered steady, but you best think twice about staying up. They laughed. Don't need to stay long, the second man said. Just want what Nat owed us. That little map of his. To the vein. Clara didn't flinch. There's no map. Sure there is. Old fool couldn't shut up about it. Said it'd buy you both a new life. She took one step back. You killed him. Wasn't personal, the first one said. Just business. Now hand it over. I told you. There is no. The third man drew a pistol and fired. The shot whistled past her cheek and buried itself in the doorframe. Wood splinters kissed her skin. She ducked, rolled, and bolted through the back door before the next shot could find her spine. The woods welcomed her with open arms. Branches clawed at her face as she ran. Her lungs burned. Her skirts tangled at her knees. Another shot cracked the air behind her. She didn't turn. There was no time to think, only move. She dove down the hill behind the cabin, scraped her elbow on a rock, tasted blood. Shouting followed. Boots stomped, but they didn't know these woods like she did. She hit the creek and splashed through, ignoring the ice that stabbed her ankles. On the other side, she pressed herself against a fallen tree, gasping. Silence. Then laughter. Let her run. Ain't far she can go. She'll freeze or starve by morning. Boots turned. Faded. She didn't relax. The pain came next. Her shoulder throbbed where a bullet had grazed the flesh. She tore a strip from her petticoat and tied it around the wound, tight. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from rage. That night, Clara Ellison slept beneath a pine tree, wrapped in a blanket of needles and shadows. The stars blinked cold above. Coyotes sang low like mourners. She dreamed of nothing. By morning, the wound had stiffened. She forced herself upright and followed the creek east, deeper into wild. She hadn't eaten. Her water flask was back at the cabin. Every step cost her something she didn't have. Around midday, her vision blurred. The world tilted. She collapsed in the dirt, cheek pressed against moss. Her mouth moved. "Nathaniel, damn you, what did you get me into?" Then a boot nudged her ribs. She opened her eyes. The man standing over her was tall, broad-shouldered, with skin the color of sun-aged leather and a beard like wildfire. He held a rifle loosely in one hand and a dead rabbit in the other. His hat shaded eyes that didn't blink. "Well," he said, voice low and unimpressed, "ain't every day I find a woman bleeding in my hunting trail." Clara tried to sit. Failed. "Don't touch me." He didn't move. "If I wanted you dead, you be colder than that stream by now." She narrowed her eyes. "You a bounty hunter?" "No," he set the rabbit down. "Just a man who'd rather not get involved." "Then walk away." He crouched beside her, examining the shoulder. His fingers were calloused, his touch efficient. "Bullet just kissed you. You live. Didn't ask your opinion. Didn't offer it." He pulled a flask from his belt, uncorked it, and poured whiskey over the wound. She hissed. "Name's Jacob Langston," he said. Finally, "Gotta camp about a mile from here. Either I leave you to the wolves, or you hobble that mile." She glared up at him. "What do you want?" He blinked. "Lady, you're a mess, not a prize." Clara gritted her teeth. "Fine. Lead." He didn't help her up. He didn't offer sympathy. He turned and walked, slow enough for her to follow, fast enough to test her. It took them hours. Jacob's camp was nothing more than a fire pit, a tarp, and a blanket roll beneath a cliff face. She collapsed beside the flames as he handed her a canteen and a strip of dried venison. "You with the U.S. Army?" she asked. "No." "A scout?" "No." "What then?" "Widower. Trapper. Former rancher. Nothing useful." He tossed a bundle of kindling into the fire. "Now you answer. Who's after you?" Clara hesitated. "3 men. One's called Maddox. Others just guns." "They kill someone you knew?" "They killed my brother." Jacob stirred the fire with a stick. "You got something they want?" She didn't answer. That night, they didn't speak again. He slept with his rifle close. She slept with the derringer under her skirt. Morning broke gray and cold. Clara sat at the fire, watching him skin the rabbit. His hands were steady, his face unreadable. "I can help," she said finally. He looked at her. "I know herbs. Remedies. I can stitch wounds and gut fish. Not much fishing up here. I'm not useless." "Didn't say you were." Silence stretched between them. Then he asked, "That map, your brother's, you got it?" Her jaw tightened. He didn't press. By midday, they were moving again. Jacob knew the land like a wolf. He checked wind, tracks, birdsong. She followed, limping but silent. Her mind chewed on everything. The map, the men, the look in Jacob's eyes when he asked. He wasn't harmless, but he wasn't cruel. As the sun dipped, Clara spotted a hawk circling in the sky. Jacob froze. He pointed. "Smoke. Cabin maybe. Could be them." She followed his gaze. Thin black threads rose in the distance. "We circle," he said. "See what we're dealing with." "No," Clara said. He turned. "What?" "I'm not running anymore." Jacob studied her. His brow furrowed. "Let's say I help you stand your ground," he said. "Then what?" "Then I bury them. Like they buried him." "You kill anyone before?" "Not yet." Jacob's gaze didn't waver. "You ain't who I thought." "No," Clara said, lifting her chin. "I'm worse." For the first time, something close to a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You'll need more ammo." He tossed her a pouch. She caught it, and for the first time since the grave closed over Nathaniel Ellison, Clara felt the ground solid beneath her feet. Not safe, not forgiven, but ready. The path east twisted through dark pine and shale, the forest thick with shadows that pressed like old grief. Clara walked behind Jacob Langston, her breath shallow, shoulder aching with each step. They hadn't spoken since morning, and the silence between them felt as deliberate as the route he chose. Always off trail, always alert. He moved like a man who trusted nothing and no one, and Clara couldn't decide whether that unnerved her or reassured her. She touched the pistol tucked in her belt, her fingers brushing the warm iron. 2 bullets left. The men hunting her, 3 at least, maybe more, had long guns and no hesitation. She'd seen it in their eyes. They didn't want witnesses. They wanted gold, and they'd spill whatever blood stood in their way. Jacob halted at a clearing ringed by boulders and dense spruce. "We'll rest here," he said, voice low. Clara sank onto a flat stone, easing her shoulder. Blood had seeped through the bandage again, but she didn't complain. He handed her a tin cup of stream water and a strip of smoked meat. "They'll be back on our trail soon," she said. "They never left it." She looked at him. "Then why stop?" He crouched beside the fire pit, coaxing a flame from tinder with flint. "Because running only buys you time, not safety. And time's no good if you're too starved or shot to use it." There was a strange wisdom in that. Not kind, not gentle, but earned. As dusk fell, the fire flickered to life, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts among the trees. Jacob finished the rabbit he'd caught at dawn, carved it clean with quiet precision. Clara watched his hands, rough, capable, careful. He didn't speak unless he had to, and when he did, it was never about himself. She broke the silence first. "What did you lose?" His blade paused just for a moment. "Everyone," he said, not looking up. She waited, but he said no more. "I buried a brother 3 days ago," she offered. "I buried our parents before the war even ended. I think the ground remembers more of my name than any man alive." Jacob wiped the blade and sat back. "Grief's a funny thing. Some carry it like a burden. Others turn it into something sharp. And you? I carry it quiet, like a shadow." The fire cracked between them. For a long while neither spoke. A branch snapped in the woods beyond. Jacob was on his feet before the echo faded, rifle raised, eyes scanning the dark. Clara grabbed her pistol, heart pounding. Silence. Then a deer, skittish and thin, bolted through the brush and vanished. Jacob lowered the rifle. "You spooked." "No," Clara lied. "Just tired of not knowing where the next shot's coming from." He nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we stay ahead. Tomorrow we move west. Higher ground, more cover." "What about the map?" He looked at her then, eyes catching firelight. "You want to keep running from gold hunters? Burn the damn thing." She didn't answer, because she didn't know where it was. Nathaniel had never shown her the map, only whispered of it when drunk or fevered. She suspected it wasn't just a trail to gold. It was a lie he believed hard enough to die for. They slept in shifts. Jacob watched the trees while she dozed fitfully. Then she took the last watch, staring into the dark with a mind that wouldn't rest. By dawn, the wound had gone hot. Infection. She said nothing. Pain was a language she'd learned to speak in silence. They moved by light, so thin it painted the trees in cold silver. Snow had fallen somewhere in the higher peaks, and the wind carried its warning. The terrain grew rougher. Steep inclines, shale ridges, sharp drops into ravines that could swallow a horse whole. By midday, they reached a narrow gorge. A river cut through it fast and loud, its surface boiling with meltwater. No bridge, no ford, just a tangle of fallen logs where beavers had abandoned their dam. "We cross here," Jacob said. Clara stared at the water. "You certain?" "It's either this or go back." She looked at the current. "I can't swim. I'll get you across." He stripped down to his trousers, boots tied around his neck. Clara hesitated, then did the same, wrapping her skirt tight and tying it at the knee. He tested the logs first, slow and careful. One shifted underfoot, nearly dumping him in, but he steadied. Then he turned and held out a hand. "Trust me," he said. She took it. They crossed one log at a time. The water roared beneath them, white and cold, spraying their faces. Clara clung to his hand, heart hammering. Halfway across, the log shifted again. She slipped. Her foot plunged into the river. She cried out. Jacob caught her before she fell fully, arms tight around her waist. His grip was like steel, and for one dizzy moment she saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. They made it to the far bank, soaked and gasping. Clara collapsed on the rocks, shaking. Jacob pulled off his shirt and tossed it to her. "Dry off. Fast." She did, wrapping herself in the rough flannel, skin flushed with cold. He built a fire fast, muttering under his breath. "You all right?" he asked once the flames caught. She nodded, teeth chattering. "You could have let me fall." "Could have," he agreed. "But you didn't." He didn't answer that. The fire warmed them slowly. Clara stared into the flames, then said, "I thought I was done with hope." Jacob looked at her, really looked. "You're not. You're just out of practice." That night, they found an old trapper's cabin tucked beneath a granite bluff, half buried in moss and snowmelt. The roof held. The hearth still stood. Clara swept out the dust, while Jacob reinforced the door. Inside, it felt almost like shelter, almost like a home. She laid out herbs from a pouch sewn into her skirt, comfrey, wild yarrow, and dried willow bark, and mixed a salve for her shoulder. Jacob watched her work. "You know what you're doing," he said. "My mother did. I listened." "You ain't just a woman running." She paused. "No." He nodded once. "Good." As dusk settled, they sat near the hearth, wrapped in blankets. Jacob sipped from a battered tin cup. "Tell me about the map." She hesitated. Nathaniel claimed he found a ledge west of Red Rock. Said it was rich, silver, maybe gold. He wouldn't show me where. Said the map was hidden. Did he hide it in the cabin? If he did, those bastards didn't find it yet. Jacob looked into the fire. They will. They always do. Then we stop them. You ready for that? She looked him dead in the eye. I buried my brother and ran through gunfire. I'm tired of running. He nodded again. Then we make a plan. Before dawn, they left the cabin and doubled back toward her old homestead. Clara led him on footpaths only she and Nathaniel had ever used, narrow trails through birch and shale that bypassed the ridge roads entirely. By midday, they reached a rocky overlook that gave them a view of the cabin. Smoke curled from the chimney. 2 horses were tied out front. One of the men, Maddox, was leaning against the porch rail, rifle across his lap. "They're settling in," Jacob said. "They think I'm dead. Let's disappoint them." They watched until dusk, mapping the ground, the movements. There were traps they could set, routes to block. Jacob drew diagrams in the dirt with a stick, his mind cold and focused. Clara added details, where the brush was driest, where the well lay, how the back trail looped to the east. That night, they returned to the trapper's cabin and slept on opposite sides of the room. Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling beams. "Jacob," she said softly. "Yeah. What would you do if you found gold?" A long pause. "Walk away." She frowned. "Why?" "Because men kill for it, and it don't buy peace." She thought about that long after his breathing went steady and deep. Morning came cold and bright. They moved in silence, packing traps, loading bullets, preparing for what came next. Clara wore her brother's coat and tied her hair back. Jacob sharpened a knife with deliberate strokes. They hiked down toward the homestead as the sun rose behind them, the world gold and quiet. When they reached the ridge again, Clara stopped and looked out across the valley. "I'm not the woman they thought I was," she said. Jacob smiled. "No, you're a damn sight more dangerous." She laughed, a sharp, unexpected sound. He looked at her, and for a flicker of a moment, the weight they both carried seemed to lift. Then came the sound of hoofbeats. They ducked low behind the brush. Another rider had joined the gang, one Clara recognized from the trading post. That made 4. "Still want to stay?" Jacob asked. Clara chambered around into her pistol. Now more than ever. They made their way to the ravine behind the barn and buried the traps just beyond the door. Jacob rigged a rope snare near the woodpile. Clara laced the front porch steps with broken glass. Every movement had purpose. Every step brought her closer to the woman she had been too long denied being. By nightfall, they were hidden in the loft of the barn, weapons ready, breath held. Below them, the outlaws laughed and drank. Clara watched them through a gap in the wood, her face stone. Jacob leaned in close. They'll sleep soon. And then we end it. Clara looked at him, her eyes hard. Promise me if I fall, you finish them. You ain't falling. Promise me anyway. I promise. Outside, an owl called once, then again. In the darkness of the barn, Clara Ellison wrapped her fingers around the pistol grip and waited for the moment to reclaim what was stolen. Not gold, not safety, but her voice, her right to stand and fight. And when that moment came, she intended to make damn sure the men who called her a spinster would never speak another word again. The loft creaked beneath Clara's boots as she shifted her weight, careful not to let a board groan. Below, lantern light flickered inside her brother's cabin. The men were drinking, sprawled out like wolves after a kill, lazy now, careless, certain their prey was long buried in the hills. Maddox leaned back in her rocker, boots on her table, his voice rough and low as he bragged to the others. Girl bled out, I'll wager. Not built for running. Hell, she was barely built for living. The others laughed, a mean, hollow sound. Clara's fingers closed tighter around the rifle. Her heart beat hard, but steady. Jacob sat beside her in the shadows, rifle propped on his knee, eyes fixed on the doorway. His face was calm, not cold, composed, like he'd walked through worse and survived. She wondered who he used to be before silence settled into his bones. She yours to shoot, he whispered. Clara nodded. But if I miss, you won't. It was after midnight when the last man stumbled to his bedroll by the hearth. Maddox didn't bother with a bed, just slumped against the far wall, hat pulled low. The lamp hissed, its oil burning low. Firelight threw shadows across the walls. Jacob tapped Clara's shoulder. One nod. She rose, slowly, rifle balanced as they slipped down the ladder and onto the dirt floor. The barn door was already cracked. Outside, the world was quiet, still as a hell breath. The sky stretched above them, black and glinting, the stars sharp as broken glass. They crept across the yard, boots muffled on the packed earth. Clara's traps lay waiting in the dark, glass on the porch, a snare by the woodpile, tripwires strung low across the corral path. She remembered, laying them with shaking fingers. Now, her hands were steady. At the porch, she paused. The door hung loose on its hinges. Jacob gestured to the side window. Clara nodded. He moved to the rear, quiet as a ghost. She stepped onto the porch, the glass crunching under Maddox's boots still there. One more step, and she was in the doorway, rifle raised. Inside, the room was thick with smoke and sweat. Maddox didn't look up, too drunk, too sure of the world bending to his will. The others were passed out. Clara stepped into the light. Maddox. His eyes snapped open. They registered her slowly, as if his brain refused to believe what his eyes saw. Then recognition, disbelief, fear. You, he breathed. She raised the rifle. He lunged. She fired. The crack split the night wide open. Maddox dropped hard, back slamming into the table, sending the lamp crashing to the floor. Flames licked at the wood. The other two men scrambled awake, cursing, grabbing for weapons. Jacob was through the back door before they found their footing. His rifle spoke twice, 2 short blasts. One man fell. The other staggered into the hearth, rifle slipping from his hands as firelight danced up his sleeve. Smoke filled the room. Clara coughed, dragging Maddox's body off the flames and kicking the lamp away. The fire crackled, then died as Jacob smothered it with a coat. It was over in less than a minute. Then silence. Not the silence of fear. The silence after thunder. Clara stood in the wreckage of her childhood home, rifle in hand, blood on the floor, breath heaving. Jacob watched her with the eyes of a man who had seen too many such moments and none quite like this. You all right? He asked. She nodded. Are they dead? He checked the bodies. All of them. She leaned against the wall. It's strange. I thought it'd feel like something. Satisfaction, maybe. Justice. What's it feel like? Empty. Jacob walked over, crouched beside Maddox's body. From his coat, he pulled a folded square of parchment, creased, worn, and stained. A map. He held it up. Clara stared. So he did have it, she said. Jacob unfolded it. It was hand-drawn, crude lines marking a pass west of Red Rock, with a small X near a ravine. Gold vein, maybe? Or another lie. What now? He asked. She took the map, looked at it, then looked around at the blood, the smoke, the ruin of her brother's legacy. She stepped to the hearth, lit the corner of the map with the embers, and let it burn in her hand. The parchment curled, blackened, and turned to ash. Jacob said nothing. I won't bury another soul for the sake of a fantasy, Clara whispered. They left before sunrise, burying the bodies in a shallow pit behind the stable. No markers, no words, just dirt and the wind. They returned to the trapper's cabin by midday. Jacob started a fire while Clara changed her bandages. Her wound had closed, but the skin was red and puckered. She dabbed it with vinegar, gritting her teeth. Jacob poured coffee into 2 cups. Saturday. You know, he said, voice soft, you never did tell me your full name. Clara Rosalind Ellison, she answered, smiling faintly. Born to nothing. Taught to endure. He tipped his cup in salute. To endurance, then. They sat in the hush of the pines, the fire popping gently, the air full of coming frost. She looked at him. What will you do now? Winter's comin'. Might head south. Follow the river. You're good at disappearing. He met her eyes. I'm tired of it. She nodded. So stay, she said. He raised an eyebrow. Here. There's enough room. I can rebuild. It'll take work. He leaned back. You offer me a cabin or a home? Her smile deepened. Whichever you're brave enough to want. He said nothing, but the look in his eyes answered enough. Days passed. The first snow dusted the pines, quieting the forest. Clara fixed the shutters, patched the roof. Jacob built a corral for a mule he found wandering the pass. They didn't speak much, but when they did, it was never about the past. At night, she read aloud from old books her mother had once collected. He listened. One boot crossed over the other, staring into the fire. Sometimes he'd laugh. Sometimes he'd correct her pronunciation, and she'd roll her eyes. The warmth between them grew like kindling caught slow, a glow that filled the quiet. One morning, Clara walked to the stream alone, bucket in hand. The air was sharp, her breath rising like steam. She knelt, filled the pail, and stared at the rippling water. She thought of the woman she'd been just weeks before, alone, silenced by years of being unseen. Now, she was something else, something more. Not because Jacob had saved her, but because he hadn't tried to claim her. He'd seen her as she was and stayed. That night he took her hand. Not bold, not shy, just sure. I never thought I'd have someone again, he said. You don't have someone, she replied, her voice low and warm. You have me. And he smiled. Winter deepened. Snow stacked on the roof. Firewood piled high. And inside the cabin, 2 souls long forgotten by the world found something they hadn't dared name. It wasn't romance the way young people dream. It was steadier than that. A bond forged in fire and fear, in blood and choice. Clara hung dried sage by the window. Jacob built shelves for her jars. They argued about where to place the table and laughed while doing it. He whittled a horse from pine. She stitched new gloves from scraps of leather. Their lives, once broken, mended slowly. One evening, Clara stood outside, wrapped in a shawl, eyes fixed on the stars. Jacob came to her side. You miss the town? She shook her head. They called me a spinster, like I'd failed a test I never signed up for. He slipped an arm around her shoulders. They didn't see you. No, but you did. He kissed her temple, rough and gentle all at once. I saw a woman with fire in her heart, he said. Not too old, just right on time. She smiled, leaning into him. So, what do we take from this tale? A voice might ask, echoing from the narrator's chair by the fire. Maybe it's this, that the frontier was never just a place. It was a crucible, a forge. It burned away the lies we wore and left behind only what we truly were. Clara Ellison, once a forgotten woman in black lace, had become more than anyone expected. Not because she was saved, but because she saved herself. So, if you've ever been told your time has passed, remember Clara. Remember Jacob. Remember that it's never too late to be seen, to be wanted, to begin. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and let your heart speak in the comments below. We'll see you on the next trail. Clara Ellison stood at the threshold of her cabin, fingers brushing the door frame as the wind tugged at her skirts. The storm had passed, but the sky still hung heavy with the weight of unfinished things. Snow lay crisp over the ground, glistening in the moonlight like shards of silence. Jacob stood by the corral, hat pulled low, feeding the mule. She watched the way his shoulders moved, steady, deliberate, shaped by labor and loss. He hadn't spoken much since the scout came through, bringing word of a stranger asking questions in Red Rock. A man with scars across his jaw and eyes like split flint said he was hunting a traitor who'd cost him half his crew back in Kansas. Clara knew that name he never spoke aloud. Archer Vale, the man who'd nearly killed Jacob. The reason he changed his name. The ghost that had chased him even into the quiet corners of Wyoming. And now the ghost was coming. Jacob tossed the last of the oats into the trough. "He's near," he said without turning. "Day, maybe two." Clara stepped down the porch. "You're not running." "I did that once. Left men behind. Didn't sit right." She nodded. "You gonna kill him?" His silence answered. She reached for his hand. "Don't go alone." He looked at her then. Something cracked in his gaze. "If I don't come back." "No, Clara. No. We face what's coming. Together." He held her gaze, saw the steel beneath her softness. She wasn't the woman he'd met weeks ago, wounded, hesitant. This Clara had risen from ash forged by loss and choice. "All right," he said quietly. "Together." That night, they packed light, rifles, powder, canteens, dried meat. Jacob buried a small pouch under the floorboards, old letters, a lock of hair, and a badge he no longer claimed. Clara left a note, just in case. It read, "If you find this, take what you need. We've gone to finish what should have been done long ago." They set out before dawn, snow crunching underfoot, breath rising in clouds. The trail wound west toward Red Rock, the horizon pink with early fire. By midday they saw the dust plume. Jacob pulled Clara behind a rock outcropping. Below, on the frozen creek, rode three men. One rode with ease, tall, commanding, a scar dragging down the side of his mouth like a question mark carved in flesh. "Archer," Jacob muttered. Clara's fingers brushed the rifle sling at her side. "That him?" Jacob nodded once. "He doesn't forget debts." "Neither do I." They shadowed the riders for hours, slipping from pine to pine, keeping distance but never losing sight. At dusk, Archer's men made camp in the low valley. Clara and Jacob waited on a rise above, watching firelight flicker through the trees. "They'll bed down soon," Jacob said. "We can get close. Maybe take one before they wake." Clara's hand went to her rifle. "And the rest?" Jacob looked at her. "We end it." They waited until the fire dimmed. The men drank, played cards, cursed the cold. Then, one by one, they bedded down, wrapped in thick coats and old sins. Jacob moved first, silent as breath. Clara followed, rifle tucked tight. They crept to the edge of the camp. A bottle rolled near the fire. One man snored. Then the wind shifted. A dog's bark cracked the dark. One of Archer's men jolted upright, pistol drawn. "Who's there?" Too late. Jacob fired once. The man dropped. The others woke to chaos. Archer rolled, shouting orders. Clara dropped to her knee and fired, her shot striking the second man clean through the chest. Archer scrambled behind a fallen log, firing blind. "Ellison," he roared, "you damn coward." Jacob stepped into the firelight. "Ain't Ellison anymore." Archer stood, face half lit. "That's so? Then come take your reckoning." Jacob charged. The two men collided like bulls, fists flying, boots slipping in blood and snow. Clara stayed back, rifle up, eyes sharp. But this fight was his. Had to be. They slammed into the log, rolled through ash. Archer's knife flashed. Jacob blocked, elbowed, landed a hard blow to the ribs. Archer gasped, swung wildly. Clara moved forward, but Jacob shouted, "No!" She froze. Archer slashed Jacob's arm. Jacob grunted, caught Archer's wrist, twisted until the blade dropped. Then he brought his fist down, once, twice. Archer sagged. Jacob panted, bleeding, chest heaving. "It's over." But Archer laughed, blood bubbling on his lip. "You think killing me ends it? Boys like me never really die." Jacob stepped back. Clara raised her rifle. Archer grinned. "Go on then. Spinster's got teeth now." She didn't hesitate. The shot echoed across the canyon. When it faded, there was only wind. They buried the bodies before dawn, piling rocks high. Jacob said no words. Clara tied a scrap of her scarf to a branch and stuck it in the mound. "Not for them," she said. "For the part of you they tried to bury." Jacob turned to her. "You saved me." "No," she whispered. "We saved each other." They returned home slower, weary but lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. Snow melted beneath the sun's return. The mountain stood quiet again. A week passed. Clara sat on the porch one evening, sewing a new lining into her coat. Jacob carved beside her, shaping a wooden horse for a child not yet born. They said little. Then came the sound of hooves. Clara stood. A rider crested the hill. Young, maybe 16, dressed in Union blue turned gray, with trail dust. He stopped at the gate, eyes wide at the sight of them. "You Clara Ellison?" "I am." He handed her a letter. "From Red Rock. Sheriff said you'd want to see this." She opened it slowly, hand steady. The paper trembled in the wind. It was from Hannah McClure, the schoolteacher who'd once called her bitter, unwanted. "Dear Clara," it began. "Word travels slow out here, but we heard what you did, how you stood your ground. There's talk of you in every saloon, every feed store. They call you brave, call you the one who didn't break." Clara blinked hard. Her fingers clenched the paper. "There's a girl in my care," the letter went on. "Name's Miriam. 12. Orphaned in the fire last spring. She don't speak much. But I told her about you. Told her what a woman can become when she decides not to be forgotten." Jacob stepped beside her. "Read the letter over her shoulder." "She wants to meet you," Clara said, voice soft. "Then we should go," he replied. She looked at him. "You sure?" she asked. "I am if you are." Clara folded the letter, tucked it into her coat. "Then we ride in the morning." The sun dipped low. The mountains wore gold. Jacob took her hand. "No words this time. No need. So, what do we take from this tale? That some reckonings come late, but they come. That strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sows in silence, rides without fear, and speaks only when it must. And that love, true love, sees you not for what you were told you were, but for who you fought to become. If this story stayed with you, share it. Carry it. And when your own moment comes, as it surely will, choose to be seen. We'll meet again down another trail.